We follow the story of a 19-year-old girl named Renee, who is in a bad position in her life. She has multiple mental health problems, including substance, and she often commits self-harm. She enters a convention hosted by one of her friends offering charity efforts for her, as he cares for her deeply. The story flashes back to when Renee was a young child. She strongly believes in fairy tales and has a vivid imagination. Renee often draws the things she imagines, playing with her stuffed bear, which she sees as an animated object. At night, even her nightmares are given life by her powerful imagination. She feels her scary drawings moving and coming for her, while her stuffed companion does its best to protect her. The young Renee screams at the top of her lungs as her monstrous drawing jumps in front of her. Her parents rush to her room, turning her lights on, and the monstrous drawing immediately vanishes. Her father kisses her goodnight, and her mother stays with her until she falls asleep. Renee imagines the sun shining from her window. Vines, flowers, and other plant life start blossoming in her room, and soon, she is transported into a beautiful forest filled with life. However, even happiness in this imaginary forest is temporary, as it soon starts to rain. When she wakes up from her fairytale world, the real world is not much of a difference. Renee's best friend, Jessie's, mother passes away. This is when she realizes that it is time to leave her fairytales behind and grow up. Renee is now a teenager. She is lying in the same bedroom she grew up in. Her colorful drawings made by her vivid imagination back then have now been replaced by more darker and mature artworks. Her mother knocks on her door, and she gets up to open it. Her mother's smiling face greets her as she hands Renee her medicine for her bipolar disorder, which she calls crazy medicine. Her mother explains that it is not what she claims it to be. The medicine helps her control the symptoms of bipolar disorder, stabilizing her mood and preventing her from spiraling into depression. Renee puts the medicine in her mouth, and her mother leaves. As soon as the door closes behind her, Renee spits out the tablet into her trash bin and hides the bottle inside her drawer. Renee walks to school with her friends. Although she is all grown up, her imagination still runs wild. She and her friends, Jessie and Dylan, play music on their headphones, imagining that the students in the hallway are having a party to their beat. Jessie quickly removes Renee's headphones when she spots Sean approaching them. Renee has a big crush on him and stares at him, full of admiration. Sean casually mentions the Halloween party later that night. Renee is convinced that the three of them are going. The three of them arrive at the party, all dressed up. Renee's friends are reluctant after seeing how wild the party is, but she insists on staying. Renee drinks the night away and makes out with Sean with every opportunity she gets. After the party, Sean drops her off in front of her house. Back in her room, Renee starts having hallucinations of her mirror breaking. With her heart filled with regret, she picks up a shard and starts pressing it against her. The next day at school, students start staring at Renee the moment she enters the building, as if everyone is intrigued by what happened the night before. Her friends do not dare to approach her. Only Sean walks proudly beside her, putting his arms around her shoulder. Her days at school pass by this way, only the guy walking beside her constantly changes. She jumps from one party to another, until it escalates to substance sessions. Eventually, Renee gets addicted. This only bastardizes her vivid and creative imagination. She finds herself in a wasted forest, with no vegetation, and only burnt plant life in sight. She sees herself as a child, running away, when suddenly a car comes out of nowhere and hits the child. 2 years later, Renee is at a playground at night, with a man named Mackie having their usual drinking session. Mackie tells her about a substance session nearby, and the two of them immediately head there. Everyone at the house starts partying under the influence of the They start singing and dancing. Soon, Renee locks eyes with the host of the party and feels like a bucket of ice-cold water has been dumped over her head. The man approaches her and leads her to the bathroom to violate her. Renee is left helpless and weak from the effects of alcohol and the substance. She cannot do anything but allow the man to do as he likes. After the party, Renee lies in the bathtub, crying in pain, regret, and She walks up to the man, who is now sleeping on his bed, holding a shard of glass. She thinks of harming the man, but decides against it. Renee puts the shard on his bedside table and proceeds to take the man's belongings. She walks out of his room and sees that there are only people left at the house. She makes sure that nobody pays her any attention before leaving the house. She walks in an unstable manner in her highly intoxicated condition. She lights up a cigarette as she makes progress slowly. Renee has not gotten far from the building when a car suddenly slows down beside her. The host of the party sits in the passenger seat, urging her to get in. Fed up and terrified about everything that happened that night, Renee simply tells him to leave her alone. She books it out of there as fast as she can, fearing for herself. It only takes a second for the man to react. He jumps out of the car and runs after her. Meanwhile, the driver of the car accelerates, planning to intercept her. She turns a corner to a dark and narrow alley, a few seconds ahead of the man. When the man reaches the alley, Renee is nowhere in sight. He decides to run straight out of there, hoping to catch up to her. What he does not know is she is hiding behind a dumpster. Renee quietly calls her friend to ask for help. Renee is sitting in front of a convenience store the next day, waiting for her friends to pick her up. Jessie and Dylan arrive in his boss's car and invite her in. Dylan initiates some friendly banter, sharing that he is now an intern at a music production company. He is hoping that he gets recruited there permanently. On the other hand, Jessie is not too thrilled to see their old friend. She mockingly asks her whether they should drop her off at her parents' house or another crack house. Renee ignores her snide remarks and thanks them for picking her up. She has no particular place in mind and lets her friends decide. To her disbelief, they stop by a local church. Dylan explains that his boss is there and he has to return the car. It was not his primary intention to bring her there. However, he still invites her to listen, as his boss will be testifying as an ex-substance abuser. Renee questions him, mildly offended. Dylan quickly drops the topic to avoid digging himself a grave and tells her that if she does not want to come, then she can wait in the car. Renee sees a man smoking a cigarette behind the church and walks up to him. The two of them share a cigarette and a few jokes between them. The back door suddenly opens and Dylan walks out, handing the keys to his boss. He is surprised to see them together, but quickly introduces them to each other. The fellowship of the church starts, and Dylan's boss, David McKenna, shares his battle with his addiction and his journey to the right path. To Dylan's surprise, Renee quietly enters the church to listen to her smoking buddy. David had been so addicted to the illegal substance that it pushed him until his heart stopped. Fortunately for him, his father managed to revive him, and since then, he has started making his life better, seeing it as his second chance. Renee is in such a clouded mental state that she cannot hear David's words, and she is constantly bothered by the ringing in her ear. All of a sudden, she hallucinates screaming at the top of her lungs. When she gets back to her senses, the people around her do not seem bothered at all. Horrified by her hallucination, Renee quickly heads to the bathroom to take more to stop her withdrawal symptoms. She realizes how ridiculous her life is and starts questioning what she has become. David has just returned to his car, exhausted, when Renee suddenly enters it, terrified. Although he is surprised by her sudden intrusion, he is immediately concerned for her when she surrenders a packet and breaks down. David throws out the contents of the packet and offers to bring her to a rehabilitation center to help her. At the rehab, the doctor interviews her and deducts that she has existing mental health problems, along with her substance use disorder. Renee is uncooperative whenever the doctor asks her about her mental health issues and medication. She just wants to be rehabilitated for her substance addiction, and nothing else. In the end, the two of them walk out of the office, and she informs her friends that the center cannot take her in because of her healing wound from self. She has to be healed properly first before she can proceed with the program. Her current state could trigger the other patients, and the doctor cannot risk the chance of his other patients relapsing. Renee walks out of the rehab, followed by Jessie and Dylan. David tries pleading with the doctor to let her in, but the doctor explains that he really cannot. He instructs David to bring her back in a couple of days to start her healing process. Knowing that he already has a lot going on in his life, David refuses the responsibility. But the doctor reminds him that someone committed to his own healing before, and now it is his time to pass it on. David in Renee's place drops her off at her parents' house to stay in for a couple of days. However, as soon as her parents see her, they are immediately on guard. Renee explains that she is going to rehab in a couple of days, and she needs a place to stay. Her father painfully turns her down after the last time her sister found her substances. They do not want that incident to happen again, and they are just trying to protect her sister. Meanwhile, inside the car, David and her friends are debating whether to let Renee stay at their place. Jessie's mother just passed away, so she does not want any visitors. Dylan's mother is an alcoholic, so it would not help their cause if Renee is caught with her. David is absolutely against letting her stay at his place, as he does not want to be responsible for her. But after a lot of convincing, and his guilt eating at him, David gets out of the car and offers his house. It is decided that Dylan and Jessie are also staying, to accompany them. That night, they reach his huge house. He offers Renee to pick her room first. Meanwhile, he gives tasks to Dylan and Jessie on how they can help and handle Renee. Dylan is tasked to bring her to the grocery, to buy food and distract her as much as possible. Jessie is tasked to hide all the knives and sharp objects in the house, to avoid Renee further harming herself. Later at bedtime, Jessie is already sleeping peacefully in her shared bed with Renee. Renee shifts and turns around the bed, not being able to get a wink of sleep. She sits up and starts hallucinating dark smoke seeping out of the vent. She grabs her headphones and heads downstairs to relieve her hallucination. She puts on her headphones and starts partying to the music, envisioning a club with lots of people partying along with her. A man in a black beanie peeks through the door and smiles at her wild and ridiculous demeanor. Renee suddenly falls from fatigue. At the same time, the man enters the house, triggering the alarms. David comes down with a bat, but when he recognizes the intruder, he turns off the alarm and introduces him as Jamie, his occasional roommate. Jessie and Dylan head back to bed while Renee offers to make their new visitor a sandwich. They get to know more about each other. Jamie shares that he is traveling from place to place for his company, while Renee tells him her story. Jamie wishes her luck in her new journey and heads to bed. David joins her eating her sandwich. Renee thanks him for giving her a place to stay and taking care of her. He simply tells her that someone did it for him before, and now he is just returning the deed. The next morning, David tasks the three friends to paint his wall, which is covered in graffiti. This is to keep his house clean and to keep Renee distracted. Jamie joins them and invites them to a music festival, where Renee's favorite band will be playing. David and Jesse think that it is a bad idea, since it is known that attendees of music festivals often bring illegal substances. But after much convincing from Jamie, and Renee assuring them that she will not be thinking about when preoccupied with music, they finally agree to go together. Everyone is having fun at the concert, except for David, who is constantly on guard for anything that might endanger Renee. As the party goes on, Renee asks Dylan and Jamie to pick her up so she can body surf on top of the crowd. She assures them that she will go back to their spot immediately, so the two haul her up, and Renee has the time of her life, floating upon the crowd and watching the bright fireworks up in the night sky. At this moment, a man comes up to David, and he is not able to see the antics of the group. When he realizes that Renee is missing, he quickly walks up to them and scolds them from letting her go. They split up to find her more quickly. When Renee gets out of the crowd, she sees her friend Mackie and walks up to hug him. He brings her along, asking how she's been. She tells him that she is going clean and plans to go to rehab. Mackie is surprised by her sudden change and tries to invite her to a session nearby. However, when Jesse calls her over, she hugs him goodbye and walks to her friend. Jesse suspects that she had a session with Mackie and gets aggressive. Renee tries explaining that that is not the case, but Jesse lashes out at her, telling her how sick and tired she is from dealing with her. Renee is brokenhearted, hearing these words coming out of her friend, especially knowing that there is truth behind it. Jesse does not return with them to David's place that night. Renee's feelings of worthlessness are slowly resurfacing, and she is getting triggered. She plans on sneaking out of the house to ease herself. She is about to walk out the door when Jamie suddenly enters the house. She tries hiding behind the door, but surprises Jamie when he turns off the alarm. He decides to keep her company for a while, and to keep watch on her as well. After a while, he notices that she does not seem so well. Renee starts feeling queasy, and they run back inside the house, where she can throw up. Dylan, David, and Jamie do their best to help her get settled into bed. However, it is a challenge for her, since she keeps throwing up and getting chills from the withdrawal symptoms. She keeps hallucinating that night, remembering her traumatic sex abuse. She remembers how her creativity and vivid imagination, which brought her joy as a child, is the very thing that pushed her into a dark place. She wakes up with a headache the next day. She walks out of her room and hears David in an argument on his phone. When she peeks into his office, he immediately slams the door on her. A few seconds later, David regrets his loss of temper and looks for Renee. When he comes downstairs, Dylan mentions that Renee is on the patio. He finds her lounging in the jacuzzi and joins her, fully clothed. He shares his story with her, how he is banned from England, and how he believes that he was always the problem, for always spiraling down to rock bottom. Renee appreciates his honesty and his empathy for her. She asks for his permission to go somewhere important, swearing that she will bring Dylan along to keep her in line. David agrees, giving her a 1-hour time limit, just to make sure that she is not doing anything that can harm her. She and Dylan go to the church to pay respects to Jesse's father. Today is the mark of his passing away. They find Jesse mourning alone. Jesse feels like Renee left her at the same time her father did. Renee finally explains what caused her to spiral down. It was back at the Halloween party when she got so drunk, and Sean took advantage of her. Dylan and Jesse are mortified and heartbroken for what she has been through, and its effects on her life. Jesse apologizes for all the things she said to her at the music festival, and assures her that she will be with them for Renee's cause. Day 4 into Renee's healing process before she undergoes rehab. Their whole group hangs out at a coffee shop. Dylan, Renee, and Jesse look around the shop and joke around. Dylan and Jesse still tiptoe around subjects when it comes to Renee's condition, but she shrugs it off and pokes fun at it, taking it as it is. Renee is sitting on the couch, drawing a butterfly. Jamie hands her coffee and sits beside her. He reluctantly asks her a favor, asking for her permission to write her story. He believes that it could inspire other people going through the same thing. However, when he sees her questioning face, he does not want to push the subject further. Renee considers the idea and decides to let him do it if it could help someone in the same position. The host at the coffee shop announces that it is an open mic night and invites Dylan to perform. Dylan awkwardly introduces himself. He is incredibly nervous since it is his first time performing. He dedicates a song to Renee and her journey in self-healing. The day when Renee can finally go to rehab has finally come. David drops her off, along with her friends, back to the rehabilitation center. The doctor is smiling brightly, knowing that David took up the responsibility for her. David gives Renee his pocket watch as a reminder of her constant battle, and as something she can hold on to. Renee thanks him for everything he has done for her, and hugs him tightly. For her, he is like her fairy godmother who came to give her the chance she needs to change the course of her life. David laughs at the idea that he is a fairy. Shen then hugs her two best friends and waves goodbye to them. Renee started drawing more and more, getting inspiration from the people who supported her in her life-changing journey. On the other hand, Jamie starts writing Renee's story wherever he goes. When he finally finishes his project, he posts her story online, to reach and inspire as many people as possible. Jamie's post reaches hundreds of thousands of people, and even reaches the local news. It inspires so many people and encourages them to share similar stories they experienced and went through. This creates a movement all over the country and a non-profit organization that aims to help people get through their dark places. When Renee finally completes her rehabilitation, her parents pick her up from the clinic. At their home, friends and family are waiting for her to celebrate her success. Everyone gives her a warm welcome and tight hugs. Jesse brings her to the backyard for some cake, and she asks Renee how she's doing. Jamie arrives at the party, and Renee immediately hugs him. She thanks him for all the letters he sent to her during her time at the rehab, and for everything that he has done for her. Jamie courteously tells her that it is she who did all the work, and he is simply the storyteller. He excitedly tells her how she became an inspiration to so many people, and how she created a movement. A petite blonde woman walks up to them, and to Renee's surprise, Jamie introduces the woman, Amanda, as his girlfriend. Feelings of hurt, betrayal, and jealousy immediately surge to Renee's heart, as she cannot understand how Jamie could show her so much care and compassion when he does not have any romantic affection for her. This sudden surge of emotions triggers Renee to feel getting pulled back down into a dark place. Later that night, she goes back to David's place to find sanctuary and peace, only to find that it has been put up for sale. David and his band broke up, and he does not need the place anymore. The next day, Renee visits the office of the movement Jamie created. He shows her around and lets her read some emails that were sent to them. However, this only triggers Renee even further, hearing all the horrible things people are going through. As the days pass by, Renee starts spacing out around the people she loves. She knows that she is not yet fully healed, and all the pressure put on her by society only worsens her condition. She starts once again. She goes back to David's place and finds him there. She wants to ask for his help and know how he managed to stay sobered up for so long. However, she finds him in a bad place in his life. He spiraled down to alcohol after all the stress he went through. Losing hope of any healing after seeing him in such a state, she leaves. She finds Sean's old truck, which starts her spiral down. She starts wrecking it, hoping to find some closure. Suddenly, she sees a teddy bear on the passenger seat. Sean is surprised to see what happened to his car, but Renee is filled with rage, hatred, and loathing that he does not retaliate. She finds out that he has a daughter now, and it breaks her heart knowing that what he did to her might happen to his little girl as well. She leaves him in a hurry and bumps into Mackie. He is now wearing a shirt for her campaign, telling her that although he is in a bizarre place in his life, he is inspired by her. This prompts her to attend Jamie's event with him. There, she witnesses people sharing their experiences and what it means to them to hear her story. She decides to share how she truly feels and how it is okay that she is not okay. The only thing that matters is we keep trying. Renee finally realizes that the way her friends were there for her is also the thing she should be doing for them. Renee comes back to David's place and knows that she has to be the one to help him and stay by his side, the way he did for her.